Hello, Slingers. Welcome to another Wordslinger podcast. Glad to have you here. I'm going to be talking a little bit about some of the things that I use AI for when writing a book, and I think you'll be pleased with the whole list, so stick around.
It's the Wordslinger podcast, where story matters. Build your brand, write your book, redefine who you are. It's all about the story here. What's yours? Now, here's the guy who invented pants optional, Kevin Tumlinson, the Wordslinger.
Wordslinger.
Well, I am Kevin Tumlinson, the Wordslinger, and welcome. I'm glad that you're here. I hope you survived the winter storms. We here in the Austin area, we had ice and snow, which is not something we normally deal with. So I had to, at different times, I kind of shoveled my driveway a little. I don't own a shovel anymore because we've sold a bunch of our stuff. So I had this like edging tool that was kind of like a shovel, and so I sort of scraped ice out of the way. And our poor little dog had to kind of navigate patches of snow in order to find a place to do her business outside. So it was a little rough, but it's over. Hopefully for good for a while. And with any luck and God's help, we will be entirely out of this house by the time the next major freeze comes along. I've had enough. of weathering freezes. So I wanted to talk about AI is everywhere, and I know, and maybe there's some fatigue, but I've been having some discussions lately with a few authors about how we use AI in our work. Now, it's funny because as soon as some people hear that an author uses AI, they immediately jump to criticizing them for using it to write the book. I in no way use AI to write a book. Not a word written by AI ever actually appears in any of my novels. But I do use AI in the writing of the work to kind of help me with some of the issues that I have had and faced as a writer over a career. So that's the stuff I kind of wanted to talk about. One that I think is interesting. Well, let me give you some of the basic ones first, actually. So one of the things that I will use AI for, and these, by the way, should be considered tips for writers. I think this will be helpful for all writers, depending on your comfort level. There are some people who are just adamant that their work is never going to come anywhere near AI. They don't want it scanned or stolen or whatever. I got some strong opinions on that probably don't match yours, but let's just brush past it. So one thing that you can use AI for in your work is helping you with descriptions of places that you have never personally visited. So my current work involves a lot of travel, and I travel quite a bit. I've traveled globally, and I've been to a lot of the places that I'm writing about. But even some of the places where I have been, there are we'll say subsets of those places that I may not have visited or I don't remember very well. I'm not getting a very good idea from photos. So I will sometimes ask ChatGPT, hey, are there any, let's just say the example that I can most readily give, are there any cafes in the Louvre that were there in 1989 that would have been open to the public? And so it will say, oh yeah, there's these 3 cafes and they're located in these regions of the Louvre. They would have been opened in 1989. Okay, well, what did they look like in 1989? And it'll give me a rundown and a description that I can leverage for the scene that I'm writing, because I did not visit the Louvre in 1989. There's no way I can do that because I have not yet perfected time travel. Believe me, I'm working on it. But I can leverage AI to kind of get some details that will help me set that scene in a way that will feel familiar and will make sense to the reader. So I'm not having AI write the scene, but I am having AI supply me with some materials that I can use. Now, I've been doing things like this throughout my career, especially once the internet age kind of fully kicked in, I frequently do things like go on Google Maps or Google Earth to, tour a place virtually. I will search the internet for photos and reviews of places. I will go on YouTube and see if there are any video walkthroughs of a place. So I've been doing things like this throughout my career. Doing it with AI is faster and can often help me spot things that I probably wouldn't have noticed on my own about a certain place. For example, one of the things that was part of the description of a particular cafe in the Louvre was it described the sounds, it described the smells, it described, the wicker chairs. I might not have noticed any of those things. I definitely wouldn't have noticed sounds and smells. Definitely wouldn't have noticed smells. Maybe if I watched a video, I would pick up on the tinking of glasses, coffee cups. But, one of the things it gave me that I thought was interesting was these, talked about round marble-topped cafe tables with coffee and tea stains from careless spillage over the years, And I'm like, wow, that's a good detail. So leveraged that, reworded that, reworked that in my own language, and now I have a scene that is much richer and fuller and much easier to appreciate. So that's one tip. Get AI to describe things that you wouldn't have direct access to. It doesn't have to be a place. It could also be, I don't know, maybe, everything I'm coming up with now is all places. I'm trying not to think of pink elephants. Maybe you want it to describe a dish, an actual meal from a specific restaurant, or give you a description of, I don't know. It all escapes me. But you can use your imagination and come up with some details. Now, another use for AI that I've frequently fall back on. Currently, one of the things I'm doing is I am handwriting my current book. So I'm using AI to scan and transcribe the text from my handwriting into typed text. That's a very useful tool. It keeps me from having to do it, and it keeps me from having to pay someone else to do it. Both of which were barriers to me doing it in the past. So now I'm actually enjoying the process of handwriting a book, something I've always wanted to do, and something that I feel is helping me to kind of slow down and take my time with the story in a way that I never have before. I've also used AI for transcription for audio to text. So frequently, weekly, in fact, this show will get a transcript generated by AI. I have a tool that does that, and it also helps me with coming up, based on the content of the show. It'll give me the show notes for YouTube and elsewhere. It'll give me, sort out all the links and all that stuff. So that's great for me for the podcast side. But as a novelist, I have used that tool to grab dialogue. At one point, I dictated some flash fiction into the voice memo app of iPhone, and then had that transcribed actually automatically for me in that app, but it was in a block of text, and so I actually had ChatGPT break it out into logical paragraphs for me. And so it did that with punctuation. It did, formatted the whole thing. So transcription and formatting are useful, are things that AI can be useful for. I use AI to do my sort of grammar and spell checks a lot now. I do rely on tools. I have tools like Pro Writing Aid is one. They've been a sponsor of the show in the past. They're not currently a sponsor, but I love Pro Writing Aid. It's like a very author-centric version of Grammarly, and so I've used both of those. And they catch things, and they're real good at spotting certain things, but I still end up with errors and typos. So, and then I also use the built-in spell check for my apps or whatever. But what I've found is when I'm done writing a scene, or in most cases looping back to rewrite a scene, if I copy and paste that scene into ChatGPT and I say, spot the typos for me, it will give me lists of typos and grammar issues and question marks about, even just plot points or something, things that, as I'm going, it's basically read the whole book, which I know is a red flag for some folks, but for me, it's fine. And it will say, hey, here's some typos. Here's something that seems a little, questionable in terms of, the way it's written. You may want to rethink it. It's muddy or it's unclear. Here's some, grammar issues. Earlier you mentioned that this character had red hair and now you're saying he's blonde, just pointing that out for you. So helping me with spotting errors, fixing errors in the text is a very useful tool, and something that I kind of have now come to rely on. And it's really sped up my process, frankly, because I don't worry as much about typos and things now. I try to write a clean manuscript, and I generally, in a scene of about 2,000 words, will have maybe 3 typos. But it has helped me to spot those typos, whereas before I could reread that passage 100 times and never see that typo, never see that I left out a word, which I do frequently leave out articles for some reason. So it will spot those for me, make suggestions. Sometimes those suggestions aren't right, and so I can ignore it or I can do the right thing, put in the thing that it actually should be. You can use it for this. I don't use it for this quite that often now, but I'm thinking about it. But like leaning in on that, hey, check me for logical inconsistencies or where I may have veered off. Are there any characters I've forgotten? Things like that. A great tool for that sort of thing is NotebookLM, which is Google's AI. Dropping, and I've got a couple of tips for Notebook. If you drop your text into your manuscript into NotebookLM, you can get an overview of sort of an analysis of the whole thing. You can even get a podcast generated to discuss it. But you can ask the AI things like, where does the story slow down? Where is it making very little sense? What do you rank the chapters in order of best to worst? Now, you should not rely on any of that stuff, but because frankly, you could ask the same question 2 or 3 times, and you may actually get a different answer each time with the same prompt and the same content. That tells you, I'll discuss why in a second, but so don't just trust it. Use it as a way to prompt yourself to think deeper about what you're creating. That's a really good rule of thumb with AI altogether. Don't trust it, but use it to help you spot things you may not have spotted, think about things you may not have thought about. The reason you could use the same prompt and the same content and get different answers every time is that all these AIs are not engaging in critical thinking. They're engaging in that generative process of what's the most logical B to this A, right? So what would most logically come next? And when it's starting fresh with something, a manuscript and a prompt, it may not have something from which to start the logical progression, and so it makes its best educated guess. And whatever it chooses for A, then it goes with the next most logical thing for B. So that's what is happening. That's why you can't rely on it to help you actually critically review a manuscript. You can ask it, where does the manuscript slow down, but it doesn't have an attention span. So it's not really going to be able to give you what a reader would think was a slow passage. But if it does lock in on something, maybe you should consider, okay, I might want to reword this. In reading this myself, I can find my attention wandering. So if you're finding that, it's probably a good guess that the reader is going to find that too. Something that I've used it for this a little, and I'm going to start leaning in and using it more. But I had a discussion with with another author, and I haven't asked his permission about this, so I'm not going to name him. But he has been using NotebookLM to kind of help in shaping his current book and finding what he thinks it may be the weaker points or whatever. And he asked it to give him its most logical guesses about what could be happening next in the story from a specific stopping point. And so it gave him like 3 or 4 different possible answers, and he said that some of them were really close to what he was planning to do. That's great. Here's where I think you could use it better. I think that's a great use of it, just to kind of see if you're setting up, the idea there is the story I'm setting up leading logically to the story I'm trying to tell. But the problem I have is that that makes your story very predictable and formulaic, or could. And so what I'm thinking about doing is feeding it the story, asking it what it thinks is coming next, and then doing anything but the things that it tells me are coming next. Completely derail it and go in a completely different direction. Upset those expectations entirely. If you recall, if you tuned into my last episode, I was talking about the idea of one of the reasons that AI is so easily able to replicate, writing and art and, all these creative things that we do, is because we've kind of become very formulaic. And so when you are formulaic, it's easy to apply a predictive algorithm to what you're doing. It's easy to say, well, he did A, B, and C, therefore D, E, and F will happen. So I think it might be wise for us to start using AI's strengths against it in that way. We are built to be pattern recognition machines. We are creative problem solvers. What if we kind of play against our own grain a little and start disrupting the patterns? To a degree, there is a certain expectation that there are tropes and things that you're going to want to meet when it comes to certain types of fiction. If you're writing a romance, the couple needs to get together. If you're writing a thriller, there's certain tropes in the thriller world that you're going to want to make sure are there. But just because you want to include those tropes doesn't mean you're locked in on how you use those tropes or where things go. You could, tell the story that involves those tropes, but disrupt the path, disrupt the way we get there, disguise those tropes, make them subtle instead of overt. I think that is a wise way to treat storytelling, because that's where you get to the this completely unexpected twist in a story that makes that story epic, that makes that story memorable. And that's what we want to do as writers, is make the stories. We want them to be memorable. We want them to be unputdownable. I want people writing reviews that complain that they started reading the book and lost a night's sleep because they couldn't close the book. They had to finish and see what was next. That's what I want. I've maybe accomplished that with a few of my books, but what if I could utilize AI to help me do that more consistently? And the trick here, like with most things AI, is that if you are asking the AI to do the work for you, then you are likely to fail. If you are asking AI to produce creative work on your behalf, you are likely to miss the marks that you think or that the people subconsciously know are the marks of good fiction or good art. You're much more likely to bomb if you are depending on the AI to do the thinking, the creative work for you. But if you, as a creative machine, take AI and use it as a tool, and then learn how to leverage that tool, then you can actually direct the path of this mighty river and actually do something profound and creative and just really good. And so that's where I want us to be thinking, is how do I take AI and leverage its strengths and leverage its weaknesses in my favor? A strength and a weakness of AI is its predictive algorithm. That is its strength and its weakness. If I give it a whole bunch of story elements and say, predict for me where this story is going to go, it could probably predict the ending that you initially had in mind. That sort of quick, easy ending that you came up with, because it just makes sense, right? And maybe that's the ending you really want, but you don't have to. If you want to, good story tends to upset expectations, and if you want to upset expectations, you can either change where these details lead for the ending, or you can change the details and somehow come to the conclusion you want after all. So if you're writing a romance and you are ultimately going to get these two kids together, you can leverage AI to help you figure out ways to throw people off. Lots of red herrings, lots of smoke, to kind of confuse people. You don't want to confuse them so much that they just throw the book away and don't finish reading it. What you want is to upset expectations but still meet expectations. You want to disrupt the path that they think things are going to go on, fool them in a way. Like, how do you fool them into thinking you're going this way? Use misdirection is what I'm saying, just like a magician, right? So people don't get upset when they go to see a magic show and the magician makes their watch disappear or something. They don't really get upset about any of that, because that's they're there for that. They want that illusion, right? And it doesn't matter that they know that that's not really magic, that they know that it's somehow sleight of hand, that this guy's just very skilled at removing your watch from your wrist or your wallet from your pocket without you knowing. They know that that's the case, but it still feels like magic because we didn't see it happen. So you can kind of know how the sausage is made and still like the sausage when it's done, because you're not watching it being made. So those are some ways that I leverage AI right now. Other ways, because I've always done my own cover design. And a couple of years ago, when Midjourney came around, I started using AI art as part of my design. And again, I've never really taken something straight out of camera, as it were, and only used that for the design. I have other things that I do that because of my design background, so I layer things. So what Midjourney and other AI art has tended to be in my career is another version of what do they call it? My brain won't let me think of it. Stock art. Thank you, brain. It's another version of like stock photography and stock art, but I have more control over what I get. We're gonna, like I said, I'm sort of setting aside any sort of ethical arguments about this stuff. I don't see an ethical problem with this. I was never going to pay anybody to do the design for me. Never going to happen. I always do my own. I was never going to pay somebody to do original artwork for me. I was always going to take elements of stock photography and make my own. I have often taken my own photographs and used them. So if you're going to argue that me using AI has somehow screwed a photographer out of potential revenue, you're going to have to make the same argument about me taking my own photos and using them in my artwork. So I don't see that. That doesn't make any sense to me. It doesn't click for me. So I have no ethical qualms about it, no moral qualms about using it. I would be a little more opposed to using AI writing within the book, but I'm not actually even all that opposed to that. If you did ask AI to generate a paragraph about, say, a place that you've never been, and it just generated this wonderful paragraph, as long as that paragraph was not lifted from someone else's work, I think you're clear. Just do it. I wouldn't necessarily call it out to anybody, especially if 99.9% of the rest of the book was written by you. If you've got 3 sentences that AI generated, I don't think anybody's going to balk at that. Maybe some would. But I think it's highly unlikely. I think the safer bet, though, is to do with the writing the same as I'm suggesting I do with AI generated art, which is touch it, manipulate it. Don't just use it, as is, but add your own touches to it, rewrite it, bend, fold, mutilate, make it your own. That's what I think is smart, not because it protects you or prevents anybody from being able to claim you used AI. I don't think that's a problem at all, especially now. But what it does is it makes it your own. It puts it in your voice. It's you want your book to be in your voice. It's the same reason I've made this argument before. It's like the reason I wouldn't have AI write the book for me is that writing the book was the part that I wanted to do in the first place. I don't want someone else. I'm not going to pay a ghostwriter to write my book, so I'm not going to use AI to write my book. I got into this because I love language and I love the way I can manipulate language and convey thoughts on the page. That's the point of me. So I'm not going to hand that off to anyone or anything. But if I did not know how a thermonuclear reactor worked, I would call up an expert to describe it to me, and I would use their verbiage as the foundation of what I wrote about it. Well, that's exactly what I'm doing with AI. I'm asking an expert in cafes in the Louvre in 1989 to give me a description of a particular cafe, and I'm using that as the foundation of the work. When it comes to my covers and any artwork that I use for promotion and marketing, I will use AI to generate an image, and then I never get exactly the image I'm after. I've got a picture in my head that I'm after, but what I can do is continue to play around and generate bits and pieces that I'm able to take into Photoshop and manipulate and make my own. But if I asked ChatGPT or Midjourney or any of the other AIs, give me an image in these dimensions that has these characteristics, and it did it just one off, I don't know. I would probably use that. I don't have a problem with that. And unless I signed something stating that I am, that this work is not AI or doesn't contain AI or AI manipulated imagery or any of that, there's no ethical or moral qualms about that whatsoever. There are publishers out there that are actively turning away works that have an AI component. That's their business. They get to do that. They're the publisher. So if you're going to work with somebody, you have to abide by the rules they have. If Amazon came along and said you can no longer use AI generated artwork in your covers, period, no questions asked, or you will be banned from publishing on Amazon, I would really have to consider changing the way I do my artwork. I couldn't just upload AI art at that point, right? So that's what I'm agreeing to. Now, would I? Probably. I don't see how they could detect it, but I could be slitting my own throat there. I'm confessing in advance, so they'd be able to nail me. But I don't think that's ever going to be a problem, because I don't think it's ever going to happen, because I don't see why it's an issue. You're not fooling anyone with it. You're not, there's the argument that AI generated video or other thing or images can be used to lie to the public about what they're getting. Now you got a problem. But if you are not lying to the public about what they're getting, if the image that they're seeing was AI generated but is an accurate depiction of what you're trying to do with the book, I could make the argument that 99% of covers out there don't accurately portray what happens in the book. And they shouldn't. They are supposed to portray the type of experience the reader's going to have with the book. That's different from portraying a specific scene within the book. I learned recently that, have you ever watched a movie trailer and thought, well, I don't have to see the movie now. Everything that happens in the movie was just basically outlined in short form in this trailer, so I don't have to go see that movie. I found out that there's a legal reason that studios are doing that, and it's because they have been sued successfully in the past for cutting trailers in such a way that gave the impression of what that film was going to be about and what was going to happen, and then none of it happened. So if they had someone who was a guest star who ended up being cut out of the final film, but they're in the trailer, they can get sued for that successfully. So the answer to that is you have to make trailers that tell people exactly what the movie is, all the way to the ending. No surprises. We don't get to be pleasantly surprised by anything anymore because people are litigious. So, that could happen when it comes to covers. It could happen with book descriptions. That sort of thing is possible. So I'll never say never. But I don't feel that that's going to be the case because readers know that, usually they're not going to be told specific. No one wants to see specifically what happens in the book. No one wants spoilers. So that's just a take. Who knows what will happen because the world is crazy. Anyway, those are some tips for how to use AI as an author. I come up with new ones all the time. I'd love to hear some of your own tips. If you have a negative opinion about using AI, keep it to yourself. I don't want to hear it. And I'm sorry, because I get enough of that as it is, and I'm tired of refuting arguments. They don't make any sense. They make no sense. AI is not stealing your work. People are going to scream and yell that it is. I get it. I've had these discussions a million times. But AI didn't steal your work. If it was stealing your work, an exact duplicate of your work would be out there for sale somewhere, and that is just not happening. AI trains on work and the same way a human being trains on work. So if you're going to make it illegal or make the parties legally responsible or something because the AI learned how to write or create artwork or create video because it scanned and observed millions of other books or movies or photos, you're going to have to start going after toddlers and full-grown people for that matter, because that's how we all learned. We all learned through imitation of other people's work. Writers learn from reading other writers. Artists learn from mimicking other artists. Carpenters learn from mimicking other carpenters. It's just the way learning works. No one is stealing from you. Stealing is a destructive act. Stealing means that they took something from you that you don't get to have back. You don't lose a thing when someone learns how to do something because you taught it to them. You don't lose anything. So it's a crazy world, though. And I know there's differing opinions. I just don't want to hear them. So anyway, thanks for tuning in. Anything else you want to share in the comments, feel free. Why don't you share with me some of the things you're doing with AI that might be interesting, and maybe we can all kind of grow with this tool together. Make sure that you like, share, and subscribe to the Wordslinger podcast on YouTube. If you are catching me on various podcast platforms, subscribe there. That sharing component is very important to me. Tell other people about the show and what you're getting out of it. I'd love to get some testimonials. It'd be great if people started telling me, what they've gotten out of the show, why they like the show. So I appreciate you for doing that. And otherwise, hope you're staying warm. Hope everything's working out for you. Good luck with your creative career, writing, art, entrepreneurship, whatever that happens to be. God bless you, and I will see you next time.
Wordslinger.